Welcome back to another episode of the Draw Control podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by former BU women's lacrosse player who is currently the Director of Player Development for Towson Women's Lacrosse, Sylvie Waters. In her collegiate career, Sylvie was named to the Patriot League Honor Roll in 2021 and in 2023. In high school, Sylvie was a two-time US Lacrosse School Girls team member, was named to the Under Armour All-America Team at Saratoga Springs, and also was a Northstar Invitational Leadership Award recipient. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today. I've been thinking about this episode for a while, so welcome to the Draw Control podcast, Sylvie, and how is everything going?
It's great to be here. I'm so excited to finally get to do this with you, and everything's been good. It's busy adjusting to the new coaching life that I'm living.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned in the intro, this summer you were hired as Director of Player Development for Towson Women's Lacrosse. I'm just curious, how did the hiring process work for that job, and what has the experience been like at Towson for you so far working for Coach Carr?
Yeah, so I started the process back in December of my senior year, realizing that I wanted to coach. So I started getting my name out there, and I had been lucky enough to work with Kylie O'Miller throughout my collegiate career as a KO17 athlete and following kind of in her footsteps in the coaching world. So when December rolled around, I sent a bunch of emails to places that I could see myself working. And Coach Carr, was one of the people that reached back out to me and got the ball rolling as I progressed into my senior season and into the summer. So I took the job back in end of July and moved down here end of August and started with the girls in September.
Nice. What's Maryland like? My grandparents used to live there a long time ago, but I haven't been in so long. So I assume it was a pretty nice state when I was there. So I don't know how much
Yeah.
has changed though.
From the lacrosse world, it's definitely how I remember it, just because, in club lacrosse, traveled down here a ton for games, even to Towson to play at the Under Armour All-America games. So far it's good. It's a little different than Boston, which is, a big city, and then home for me is a bit smaller. So it's definitely in the middle.
A good mix though, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a great mix so far.
Now, did you know after your playing career that you want to be a coach? Like you mentioned, you obviously got the ball rolling for getting this job during your senior year. I was just curious during like your junior year, were you thinking like this is something that like I want to do after I'm done playing lacrosse?
Yeah, so I was studying broadcast journalism at Boston, and I still want to kind of go down that path where I want to call professional sports games and announce. So Kylie Ohlmiller was someone who gave me the platform to do that in the college lacrosse world. So we started a series where we were calling college games um, at our own time when girls could come back and watch them, and I got the experience there. But as kind of time evolved, I realized that coaching is something I wanted to continue to do. And I unfortunately got hurt my senior year, so I got to firsthand experience what it was like to be on the sideline and be a coach. So yeah, I would say I've always wanted to coach. I've come from a family of coaches. My grandfather was a collegiate coach for 20 years at Siena. So I grew up, knowing pretty good coaches. So it wasn't a hard decision when it came down to it.
Yeah. And what's the best thing about being a coach in your opinion? Because it must be cool to get to coach great players like Osha Levy and Milana Zizakovic.
Yeah, they're great. It's been interesting to be on the other side of it all, playing 4 years as a Division One lacrosse player, and then now being on the other side of it. There's a lot of intricacies that kind of go unnoticed or that you don't realize as a player. But I would say the best part is all the relationships that you make with, the girls on the team, the other coaches on staff, and kind of your athletic department.
So let's transition now and sort of talk about the beginning of your lacrosse career and kind of work all the way up to where you are now. So from the research I did on yourself, it says that you're from Middle Grove, New York. Talk about growing up there and how did you start playing lacrosse?
Yeah, so I am from upstate New York, so it's about 45 minutes from Albany. Saratoga Springs is where I went to high school, and I started playing lacrosse in second grade in just our rec program that we had. And my sister and my cousins and I, we joined the teams, and we started in our rec program and then moved into club as it kind of got more popular.
And did you have any favorite lacrosse players and teams that you like to watch? I know that you mentioned that your grandfather coached Siena, so I didn't know if there was any players on that team that you admired as a kid.
No one specifically at Siena. He coached far before. I kind of knew what the game was, but I would say growing up, we were big Syracuse fans, and always driving out to the Dome to watch Kayla, and some of those older Syracuse girls play just because some of them were from our area. So definitely was a Syracuse supporter back in the day and still am because one of my best friends is taking her fifth year there, Sam DeVito. So it'll be good to watch her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I was because my next question was like, is it kind of weird now because you're playing against Syracuse a little bit? So maybe some of that rivalry, like it might sort of take that fan away from you a little bit.
Yeah, I think definitely once you go through the process and you find your college home, you get that rivalry, especially being in Boston, the BU, BC and all sports rivalry. Like that's something that kind of hits home. But I would say something that's interesting is now just being 1 year out of playing, I still have friends that are playing, right? So we're playing teams that I still know a bunch of the girls or I was able to play against them. So that's definitely going to be interesting this spring, as we move into games.
Now, before college, you played for your high school with Saratoga Springs, like you just mentioned. Talk about your high school lacrosse days, what you took away from it, and what's your favorite high school lacrosse memory that you can think of.
Yeah, I was lucky in high school. We had a really strong team. We had a bunch of girls that ended up going to play collegiately. So I would say one of my favorite memories is when we won the section my sophomore year. There was a big group of us that all played club together and then all played high school together. And it was a great experience, and we won it for the first time in 20 years. So it was an exciting game, and we ended up winning by one over one of our rivals who I ended up going to college with, a girl from that team. And we played together, and then some other girls went Division 1 as well.
Did you ever talk to that girl about that game at all, or do you try not to rub it in her face a little bit?
Yeah, we both were at BU. It would definitely come up quite often when we were talking about things. Just throwing it back to the one sectional game where Saratoga won.
Yeah, you gotta use those bragging rights after the game's over. That's part
For
of the
sure.
fun of winning it. So
For sure.
now you also play club lacrosse for ADK. How did your club lacrosse experience sort of help prepare you for college lacrosse with BU?
Yeah, so I was super fortunate to have a really strong club program in my area, ADK at the time. And my mom was actually my club coach. So my mom started my kind of grad year of 2020s, all together when we were in middle school. And then we transitioned in high school to a different coach who, he was great as well. And we all stuck together. And, ADK was definitely the foundation for what put me on the path to play at BU. So really thankful for that. And my mom also was great because she did a lot of the college recruiting and coordinating for our club. So a lot of coaches, when they were reaching out, didn't even know we were related. So we did a good job of staying incognito and, not making it look like I was the coach's kid. But I was super lucky. I had a strong group of girls that all played at the next level, and we really pushed each other.
Now, looking at your profile, I also saw that you competed in alpine skiing in high school. I just thought that was unique. What was that like for yourself? I just thought I would ask about that.
Yeah. My sister is a senior at BU and is on the lacrosse team, but we both grew up ski racing because of my dad. He ski raced in college and growing up. So we used to move in the winter to the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, and we would do school and ski racing up there. And then, we just fell in love with the sport of skiing. We started skiing when we were two. So it's always been a part of our lives. And the ski racing thing, she was much better at it than I was. So I kind of, once I found this lacrosse thing in high school, I kind of stuck more to that and started coaching ski racing actually for the younger kids. So I guess you could say my love for kind of coaching started in high school, whether it was in lacrosse or ski racing.
Now, have you skied in a while? Because I know some coaches probably don't want you to do that during like your playing career just to avoid injury.
Oh yeah, I did not ski my freshman or sophomore year just in fear of, going back and doing all my testing spring. But my junior, senior year in the winter, I talked to my coach and she was okay if we went slow and didn't get hurt.
All
So
right.
I skied probably 2 days in the last 2 years.
Nice, nice. Well, now you can ski whenever you want, so that works
Exactly.
out.
I'll be going home and skiing a lot. So
Now, talk a little about your recruiting process with BU. What was that like for yourself, and what made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at?
yeah, so my recruiting process was definitely different, I would say, than some of the like older girls that could commit earlier because my year was the first year of September 1st. So we went from being able to communicate with all these coaches, commit at any time to having to wait to September 1st of the junior year. But I met Lauren Morton when I was down at Duke camp and was looking at Duke and kind of fell in love with Duke. And then she had reached out and said she was going back to her alma mater, which was Boston U. And in the process, they were one of the first calls I got and one of the first visits I went on. So I took it. And as I went on other visits, I started comparing everything back to BU. So I know it sounds cheesy, but um, sorry, I didn't know if I froze for a second. But I know it sounds cheesy, but when you find like the right place, like it really feels like home. And I kept comparing things back to Boston. So all said and done, it was an easy decision. And my junior year, the day before Thanksgiving, I committed. So I had a lot to be thankful for then, as I still do now.
Yeah, yeah. And once you got to college, what was like the biggest adjustment you had to make to college lacrosse? I assume it must have been weird for yourself because that freshman year was completely different than, I guess, most seasons because it was sort of uncertain of when you guys were going to play your first game.
Yeah, so I would say I had two freshman years, my freshman year and my sophomore year. Just because freshman year with COVID, it was new for everyone. And then sophomore year without COVID, it was like, wait, we're allowed to do this. Like we can all be in one locker room together. We can all be in the training room together. So one of the biggest adjustments I think was the pace of play and how fast everything really moved at the college level. Um, as well as just like how good everyone was, right? Like everyone was recruited to play Division One, everyone was recruited to play at a high level. So instead of you go from kind of being a big fish in a small pond to a minnow in the ocean when you get to college lacrosse, and everyone is just as good to your left and your right. So I think the biggest adjustment was the pace and just how good everyone was around me.
Oh yeah, for sure. I could imagine you had some really good players on your team that your freshman and sophomore years. So when I was just looking up some of the statistics, and I'm also curious, like you
Yeah.
guys got to play in the Patriot League conference, and I feel like that's the most underrated, one of the most underrated conferences in women's lacrosse. You got obviously your team, but Loyola, Navy, Army, Holy Cross, like a lot of teams that I think could give a lot of teams a good game. So it seems very competitive conference, but what's it like being a player in the Patriot League and just the competition you face each game?
Yeah, I would agree. The Patriot League is a tough, underrated kind of conference. We do have Army and Navy, which again, like you have the utmost respect for those teams. Like what they're doing on the day to day is far different than what we're doing on the day to day. And then they come out and they ball out and they play amazing. And then you have a Loyola who crushes every year and crushes teams outside of the Patriot League. So I would say it's definitely getting stronger, and being able to beat Navy in my time at BU was one of the highlights for sure. Like we got to truly prove who we were that year and give a strong run for their money. But I would agree that the Patriot League is on the up. Colgate and Holy Cross, strong, strong teams. And it helps when we can play at a conference that's strong and get us ready for in conference.
Now, obviously, BU is a great academic university, so how did you learn to balance academics and lacrosse at such a high level?
Yeah, I was super fortunate that BU was so helpful in the academic world. We had study hall, we had tons of resources and tons of help. So I don't think without that support system and support staff at BU, it would have been as easy as it was, but definitely a lot of resources, and the balancing definitely took some time. But once you get into a rhythm and you figure things out, and we all have that type A personality to even go play lacrosse at this level, so you kind of treat school the same way.
And obviously, you were mentioning about, beating a Navy during your time with BU. So I'm curious, when you look back on now, what is your favorite lacrosse memory with the Terriers?
Oh, there's so many. I think most recently was our abroad trip that we got to do in Spain, where we got to play against Team Barcelona as well as like just be as a team and be abroad together. It was really cool. We got to teach at a school, teach lacrosse. That's definitely up there. And then I would also say our game against Navy,
Hmm.
where we as a team had just come off a tough loss on a Wednesday game and had to really turn things around for our Saturday game against Navy. And it was Easter weekend, so all of our families were there. And we ended up doing it, and it was awesome. We never went down. We always stayed up by one. And so by the time we got to the fourth quarter, we were looking at each other like, oh, this is happening. This is happening. And it was one of the coolest moments being home on a sunny day at Nickerson Field.
Yeah. What was it like being in Barcelona? Like, did you do anything cool when you were out there?
Yeah, we did bike tours. We went to like an amusement park. It wasn't an amusement park, but it was like zip lining, go-karting, trampolines, it was everything. And then teaching at the school, and then we got to scrimmage the local club team there and go to dinner with them, which was really cool.
Nice, nice. Was it like Spanish cuisine that you got to have? Because I don't really think of like
Yeah.
Spain as like I don't think of like Spain food, you know. There's not a lot of like restaurants like that out there. So I'm curious if the cuisine was pretty good out there in Barcelona.
It was it was very good. It was a lot of different things and stuff that we just had to try because, we wasn't stuff we were having here, but we did get to try like paella and all that yummy stuff. But I would agree, like you don't like find a Spanish restaurant in the middle of Boston. So it was definitely an adjustment when we got there, but the food was really good.
So another question I want to ask you, Sylvia, was like, what do you think's been like the biggest improvement you've made to your game throughout your time with BU when you think about it from your freshman year to your senior year?
Yeah, I would say my confidence definitely was something that just kind of came naturally throughout my 4 years, like progressing wise. But I would say my IQ was something that I came in with that has always been strong, but by the end was super strong and was really shaped by the people around me and kind of getting to understand the X's and O's and understanding how other people played. But I would say for sure it was IQ.
Now, how do you work on your confidence? Because I feel like every player, you know, their confidence goes up and down throughout a season. But it's such an important aspect about, you know, an athlete because I think players that play with confidence usually perform better on the field. So I'm just curious how you sort of learn to manage that part of your game and how you try to build up a positive mindset before each game.
Yeah, I think for me that falls back onto relationships and knowing that I had very strong relationships with all my coaches and all of my teammates. So understanding that like if something didn't go well or if I had a mistake, like they knew, it wasn't a personal thing or it was just a fluke, it just happened, it was just a mistake, and knowing that the people around me really supported me. So that allowed my confidence to be the way it was, right? Like I was able to have these strong relationships, but I think the mental game too is something that in life is really hard, but imagine like playing a sport at a high level, it's also very hard. So sports psych is something I definitely utilized in college and was so fortunate to have at BU. And really helped me to figure out, my resets, how I was going to keep going. If I had a bad day, just flushing it and just telling myself it's a little yellow ball at the end of the day. Because, sometimes you work yourself up and one practice can't dictate how the whole week goes. So it was definitely mentally was something I had to work on and continue to build. And again, my mental game came with confidence. So,
Now, when you think about your time with Boston University, what will you take away from that, and how do you think it's helped you now as a coach with Towson?
yeah, I would say again, like the foundation that I built at BU through relationships and through people, is really what's allowed me to kind of flourish at Towson. I was lucky that my coach, Lauren Morton at BU, was able to reach out on behalf, to all these coaches for me too. Um, letting them know like who I was as a player, who I was as a person. So these coaches who I didn't meet or didn't get to know in the recruiting process could understand who I was and why I wanted to coach. So I think again, like the family that I have at BU is going to be forever impactful on, the journey I'm on. I was just there this last weekend for our alumni game and our banquet, and it was great to see everybody. And, it's just a place that will always be home.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know if Towson plays BU next year?
We aren't playing, unfortunately. We tried because my sister is a senior on the
Yeah,
team. So we wanted to, but definitely down the line, we would love for that to happen, or maybe in a fall ball game.
I feel like your parents are probably like, you know, I don't want to choose sides, so maybe it worked out for the best, I guess. That's at least trying to have the positive mindset to look at that.
For sure. And I played low attack and she's a low defender. So we were always going against each other.
Now let's move on to a segment I like to call the non-lacrosse segment, where I ask you some non-lacrosse questions to get to know you more off the field. I'll answer these as well to make it a fun conversation. So,
Cool.
first one is if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
Oh, that's so hard. Um, I don't know. Who would play you? Let's go you first.
I always say Ryan Gosling just because I think it
That's
would be funny to have him play me in a movie because obviously we don't look anything alike. So I just think it'd be funny to brag to people that, yeah, Ryan Gosling played me in a movie and people are like, that's not true. And then you just throw it to them. So that's who I would go with just because it would kind of be funny for me. And I think he seems like he's a good actor too. So I think that also helps as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll go Jennifer Lawrence just because I love the Hunger Games and I think
Hmm.
she's so cool.
Now, obviously you were just in Boston. So what is your favorite thing about Boston?
I love the city. I love being like emerged right in like the city and having Commonwealth like go right through the middle. So I loved being able to walk to Newberry Street and walk to everywhere that we needed to go while we were in school.
I would say for me, from my time going to Boston, I would say the history of the city is really cool. It's like
Hmm.
everywhere you look, there's like something happened like in the
For sure.
Revolutionary War or something. So I always find that
Yeah.
pretty cool. So that's what I would go with, or the sports scene, obviously, because I'm a
I
big
was just
sports
gonna
fan.
say, I would also say the sports scene. It's pretty cool. You have all these professional teams right there
And
to be
college
able to
teams
attend.
too. So it's like a lot of it's like I would say it's the best sports city in the world, in my opinion. Maybe I'm a little biased as a Bruins fan, but that's what I'll go with.
I would have to say it was tough being a Rangers fan in Boston.
Oh, luckily there wasn't a lot of lot of Bruins Ranger games, so at least you didn't have to worry too much about that.
Exactly. I didn't tell too many people either.
Okay. Because I know there's some like for the Canadians that play lacrosse in New England, it's tough being a Leafs fan in New England. So that's
Yes.
probably even worse because usually the Bruins beat them every playoffs.
Yeah.
Next one up is if you can play a game with any professional sports team in the world, who would you pick?
Any professional sports team, I would go Chicago Bulls with Jordan
Okay.
at that time.
I'll go with the Bruins as well. Just a big hockey fan, and it would be cool to be on an NHL team for like a week. So that's what I'll go with. And you get to walk in like cool suits in the arena every game, so that looks like a lot of fun as well. Next one up is who had the best style off the field on the BU women's lacrosse team? I know from the other players that I've talked to, they all say Elle Stevenson or Quinn Ferry. But Sylvie, I think you're up there. You might have the best style on the BU women's lacrosse team, so I'll give you a shout out for that.
Thank you. I think I'm up there too, but those are two very good answers. Ellie and Quinn are very stylish. Those would be my two guesses for sure.
Would you say that Avery's up there in the style rankings?
She is. When she lets me borrow her clothes, I probably jump up in the rankings too.
Okay. Well,
But
if we
she's
ever
got
had,
swag.
okay, if we ever on the podcast, I feel like she'll say the opposite. So,
Yes, she might not say the same about me, but she should be your next guest. There's my plug for that.
all right. We'll definitely reach out, that's for sure. So, now, next non-lacrosse question is, what is the most interesting thing you've read or seen recently?
Um, Book wise, I'm a big reader all summer. I would say the Court of Rose and Thorns book series is what I read all summer. And they're books that are like this thick. Couldn't tell you the last time I read a book over 500 pages, but I did it this summer and I'm still going. So
Nice. What's it about?
it's kind of like Hunger Games meets Game of Thrones. And I don't even like Game of Thrones, but it's been pretty good so far.
That's good. That's good. I definitely gotta
Yeah.
check that out. I would say for me, I've been trying to stay off like the internet and news just because it's such a crazy time. But I was like listening to a song, The Nights by Avicii, and I haven't heard that song in like 5, 6 years. I was like, man, I forgot how good this was. This is a good song. And I remember I think I put it in my senior quote. I think that might have been the last time I listened to it. So it was a good song. So it was like good reminiscing about, his music, sort of going through it. I
For
love when
sure.
like you rediscover like songs that you haven't listened to in a few years. So that was
Same.
sort of
I
been my
love
most.
music. That's
Oh
the
yeah.
best. And then you listen to it so much again, then you don't listen to it for another year and a
Yeah.
half.
Exactly. It's just it's a lot of fun. So that was pretty cool. That's been like the most interesting thing I've been, I guess, listening to this week. So
Love it.
last non-lacrosse question is what is something that you're deeply passionate about outside of lacrosse?
Deeply passionate about outside of lacrosse, I would say sports and family.
Nice.
Not lacrosse. I am like a big professional sports fan, other college sports, and then, family is those are like my people, those are who I want to be with, who I'm always around. So I would say those are my top two.
Nice, nice. I would agree with you, probably like sports, specifically hockey. I'm a big hockey guy. Um, and I would say like music and photography as well. So, but I have to ask, like, who are your favorite like professional sports teams outside of the Rangers?
I would go Rangers and then football, NFL, don't really have a team, but if I had to pick a team, I'd go the Bills. And I'm in full Ravens country down here. So I am purpled out. Everyone has purple on here. But really, I'm a big underdog supporter in
Okay.
whatever games are happening.
So how could you root for BU hockey? Because they're always not the underdog. I
I
have to
do
ask
love my
that.
BU hockey guys. They're the best. But I was actually able to watch them play Michigan this weekend. So they they're
That's not
definitely
really an
not the
underdog
underdog.
matchup though, because
Yeah,
Michigan's also really good at hockey too.
they don't really play any underdogs. So
Well, I'm a big UConn hockey fan, as you can
I can
see,
tell.
and usually
So
we're the underdogs in hockey when we play against or when they play against BU. So that's probably one team that you could say that for. Like a,
that should be your next branch out of the Draw Control podcast is like Rinkside or something and get these guys on the podcast.
I actually did have a college hockey podcast a long time ago, back when I was in high school. So
That's
I did do
awesome.
that. I interviewed Sam Stevens from
Oh,
BU. I
really?
don't know if you knew who he is,
Yeah, we
but
went to school together.
yeah, he's a nice guy. So I had him on. But it was hard to get
That's
the BU
awesome.
guys on because they're so popular. So they
Oh,
don't
they're
really
not
like
that popular. You can get them on.
Macklin Celebrini. That would have been kind of cool, but obviously he can't come on. How
Yeah.
weird, how kind of interesting is that as an athlete, like knowing that there's like a 17-year-old phenom that like goes to the same school as you do. Like that must be cool from like a BU perspective.
Yeah, it was like for people that don't know, BU doesn't have football. Hockey's like our big sport and they're also like some of our best friends at school. So I was fortunate enough to know a bunch of the guys on the team, but to us they're just like our friends and we have class with them and they're normal, but it's definitely interesting when you go from like having tutoring and classes with the number one overall draft pick to then not seeing him again. You graduate and he's in the NHL. So um I guess it is pretty cool, but to us, like again, we're just like these are our friends and they're pretty good athletes and we're pretty good athletes as well.
Yeah, I feel like that would be cool to see that in lacrosse, like someone who's so good gets to like skip their senior year and go straight into college. I feel like that
If
would
they're
be
sophomore,
awesome.
junior, senior year. Yeah.
So that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's get back to some lacrosse questions now. I
Yeah.
guess one thing I want to ask you was what should be done to help continue to grow women's lacrosse from your perspective?
Yeah, I think continuing to broadcast games on the same level at which the men's games are broadcasted, with whether it's like ESPN Plus or on actual streaming TV, like live TV, just so a lot more people can be exposed to it. I also think when we have all these amazing athletes that go play at the next level, like Athletes Unlimited and the our women's box team just won gold. Like I think broadcasting that as much as we can will help to continue to grow the game.
Now, obviously, you're a coach, so I did want to ask you this as well. What advice would you give to younger players who are listening to this podcast who want to be in the position that you were in, being a collegiate lacrosse player?
Yeah, I would say stay patient. Everyone's process looks different, but at the end of the day, it works out and you end up where you're supposed to be. So I think make sure you stay consistent with what you're doing, stay working hard, but also like give yourself some grace. Like you've worked hard and everything will fall where it's supposed to.
Now, last question for you, Sylvie. Do you have any shout outs you want to give to your former BU teammates, your current players with Towson? And or if you want to give a shout out to a family member or friend, feel free to do that. And
Yeah.
obviously, I always ask who should we have on the podcast next, but we know Avery Waters is definitely that answer, as you said earlier. So we'll definitely try to get her on as well.
Yeah, I would shout out all my BU girls who I played with and who are there now, and definitely my new Tiger family at Towson, who two of them have just recently been on the podcast. So I'll be sure to tell them tomorrow that I was on last night. But I would say just this new Tiger family and my Terrier family for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, Shannon and Milano are great. I know they're defenders. I don't know which side of the ball you work on. So,
I,
but
I work with the offense, so I get Mo a little bit when she's now running mid for us. So I get her when she comes over to the dark side, and then Shan is always on the other side.
yeah, but we'll try to get an attacker on just so we can ask what you're like as a coach from their perspective. So,
Perfect.
but Sylvie, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I know you have a really busy schedule, so it means a lot to us that you took time out of your schedule to do this. And obviously, I wish you all the best in the future endeavors that you have. And obviously,
Thank
wishing
you.
Towson best of luck for the upcoming season. It's going to be fun. It's fast approaching, which is crazy to think about.
So crazy. It's so crazy. Well, thank you so much for having me, and it was a blast. And like look forward to the spring season coming up and all these different teams getting after, especially the Tigers.